This is not the Church of Emmanuel, Christ of Latter-day Saints, of Joseph Smith. This is the Church of Jesus Christ.
Travis Wayne Goodsell. We're back in the saddle again this morning, though I think we're going to have dreams or something like that in the theme song in the description below. And so, I'm never going to get caught up on all of these videos to make for you guys. Paul has been helping me with the Joseph Smith papers and now currently the Brigham Young papers, and he's been an excellent help, as he's extremely faster than I am in obtaining all of this. And if you, for some reason, have been living under a rock for your whole life and you don't know what the Joseph Smith papers are, they're the authoritative source documents. And the church refuses to make the changes necessary to conform and comply to the original source documents, even though they keep claiming that Joseph Smith is our founder. If he's our founder, then you need to prioritize him first. And the church will not do that. And there's a reason why, and it's all in the Joseph Smith papers. And so they're bringing out the Joseph Smith papers is only to silence critics and trick critics into thinking that they're now proven wrong about all of their myths that they're creating about Joseph Smith. And yet, critics will not look up the Joseph Smith papers either. And so everybody's continuing their own way on ignorance, both Mormons and critics, as the church just laughs and goes, ha ha ha, we got away with this, and we've destroyed Sandra Tanner's life in her retirement with a new baseball stadium that's going to be paid for by the Mormons here in this valley, in all of Utah, actually. The bill's now on Governor Cox's desk, and he'll sign it because he's a Danite Mormon. He was put there to do the church a favor, though. And so, back to Paul. He is well aware of what's going on in the Joseph Smith papers because of his help for me. And so, yeah, he knows stuff. There are bombshells in the Joseph Smith papers that's why the church will not release them, other than to say, we did it, it's there, it's now on you. But we're not making any changes, and therefore Mormons believe there's no changes to be made. That's the big con with the Joseph Smith papers. And of course, Gail Miller also paid for this, so that the church didn't have to spend a penny on it themselves. And so Paul had seen the bus video, I'm assuming, where I talked about my dream that I had yesterday morning. And so he wants to tell me about a dream he had, and it is fully appropriate for a video I'm going to do for you guys today to start it off. And so he says this morning he woke up to a dream that he had in which he was sitting in a stake conference next to Elder Russell M. Ballard, or M. Russell Ballard, isn't it? M. Russell Ballard. And he thought in his mind, wow, I can ask a church history expert where in the Joseph Smith papers were the notes for the meeting where Joseph Smith first changed in the name of the church to add Jesus, like was done for the church name change in 1834. See, he knows. See, this is the super sacred secret Mormon group in the know. And it consists of just a few people. And why did Joseph keep using the name Church of the Latter-day Saints with his 1838 Joseph Smith history, even after the alleged section 115, for thus shall my church be called? Revelation. When I looked over at him, I saw that the lower part of his face was swelled up. That's bloating after you're dead. So much that he can only open his mouth through a small hole on the side of his mouth. I leaned over to him and said, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" He nodded his head and he said yes, and I said, "Joseph's church was first called Church of Christ, started on," and he then interrupted and said, "Yes, on April 6th, 1830. Then I continued, "Then in 1834, in a priesthood meeting, Sidney Rigdon raised his hand and proposed to change the name of the church to the Church of the Latter-day Saints. And then," he interrupted me again and said, "Good question. You should ask it in the devotional that's about to start." He then walked away, motioning for me to follow him, and I said, halfway shouting after him, "That wasn't my question." But he kept walking, and I followed him into a room where he sat me down in front of a TV where there was a live feed to a Latin American audience. I then knew from an email I had read earlier in my dream that Elder Ballard was going to do a broadcast devotional to Colombia. I greet everyone on the TV, and they said hi back, and then we sat and waited for the devotional to begin. I was excited to ask my full question in front of so many people, and then I woke up. And so he wants to know what the meaning of the dream is, as I am a dream interpreter as well. Educated, published, degreed, experienced. And so this is why I'm doing the video. You are now on a live broadcast. Whether my audience is Latin American or not, I don't know. Do they say hi back? No. It's more like death threats, hate comments, denialism. And so our dreams are based on what we experience in life, and they are encoded as we are in REM sleep. And so what we experience determines what the particular symbolic coding will be. That is for a normal dream situation. There are what's also called prophecy dreams, and if you just caught what I did, I turned Paul's dream of him going over the Joseph Smith and Brigham Young papers into a prophecy dream for him. And so back in ancient of days, everybody had a shared experience. You had to survive. And so you had duties that were based upon survival. You had to get food, you had to make clothing, you had to get shelter, and all sorts of stuff for your survival. And it was a shared experience among all of the people back in those days. And so there really wasn't much of a variety of life experience. Not much difference than what we currently have today. And so the dream interpretation books are inaccurate and incomplete because of the modern technologies that have just exploded within the past 100 years, even 200 years. It's just been ever increasingly diverse of lifestyles that each and every single one of us experiences and goes through. And yeah, that hurts relationships because people tend to want to look for a shared experience when it's virtually impossible now. And so people have to then try to establish what minimum shared experiences are required for a relationship, rather than wanting to learn new things from a new person. And so each person therefore has their own dream interpretation. But my knowledge of what Paul's been doing lately helps me understand why this is the case. Ballard just died. He's going over the Brigham Young papers right now, and he peruses over them as he turns them into Word documents for me. And so he's well aware of what much of the content is talking about. And so, especially on this, he knows about that. He saw it. This isn't just from watching my video. He actually saw the document. And so that's why he's having the particular dream that he's having. And so what I did was turn it into a prophecy dream for him. Which wouldn't have happened if he didn't ask me what it meant. It would have just been him having been working on the Brigham Young papers, and that's why he had the dream, is that he realizes that Ballard, being the big church historian, as for was he alive for Joseph Smith's assassination? It was, yeah, he was. And I lose track of order of events if I don't have it right in front of me. And so what they did last year for Joseph Smith's death day, as they pretty much blew it off, they did a repeat in the church history of Ballard previously talking about it. And so they weren't able to come up with anything new for the church news on that day. And they totally blew off Joseph Smith's birthday last December. And nonetheless, they had their 24th of July celebration of the Kingdom of Deseret that they have most every year except for the COVID year. And so that is pretty much all that the church celebrates. They do not acknowledge Joseph Smith at all. Joseph Smith's second vision, the bicentennial, was last year, and the church blew it off. And I covered it all last year in my videos, even back before conference, October conference, the previous year. And sure enough, the church blew off the second vision. Didn't bother to mention it, bring it up or anything, until finally the day of, and they just simply put, it's the restoration of the gospel. Are you sure it's not the restoration of the church? The current church historian says it's the restoration of... Yep. And so, yeah, there's some major problems that Mormons are either playing dumb or literally are dumb because of the brainwashing of the prophets. They refuse to study the Joseph Smith papers. But Paul, he sees it. He knows. And once you know from these original documents, you can never go against them unless you are an evil person. And so for critics to blow off the Joseph Smith papers as well is also wrong. Everybody, Mormons and critics, must include the original source documents in their premises for their particular conclusions, whether it's the faith promotion or the doubt promotion. And nobody will do that. Your conclusions are automatically wrong if you are unable to explain in your theory all of the evidence. You must be able to explain why Joseph Smith's 1835 Doctrine and Covenants contained monogamy, not polygamy, condemning it. Now, if you're a critic, you know very well that you think that Joseph Smith is a polygamist. And when did he start this again? Are you capable of understanding who told you this? And so, one of the comments that I found this morning was from a Nikolai Skofos, Russian. Yay. Yeah, Russians aren't involved in misinformation, are they? And yet, nonetheless, despite his little gremlin doll for his thumbnail, on Going Savage, he asks, was it true that Joseph Smith married 47 women? Did he create his church just to have a lot of sex? And so this is what the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is covering up. Because they're not covering up that Joseph Smith had many wives. They're not covering up about it's all the Danites who said this. And for critics not to understand what a secret combination is, that they purposely infiltrate to destroy, to frame, to abuse, to harm, to destroy, to coup, to overthrow, then you do not fully understand Brigham Young and his Danites. You do not understand why Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball joined the church. You do not understand 9/11, 1826, the real reason for the coming forth of the Book of Mormon. You are not telling the truth to your audiences on your various channels. And so, no, Joseph Smith never married 47 women. Willard Richards married 23 women right after the Nauvoo Temple was built in January. Brigham Young was making preparations to flee the country. Joseph is murdered. And so they needed to get as many people to go as possible. And I know this because my third great aunt, Desdemona Fulmer, was one of those women who they sealed to Joseph Smith. They don't have the keys of sealing. There was no true succession. And Mormons cannot come to grips with this, because we currently know that when Monson died, Nelson automatically is the president of the church, and that the 12 have to officially lay their hands on his head to set him apart. But this was not how Joseph Smith said succession was to be done. This is only the case because Brigham Young was the president of the 12. And so obviously he has to make that claim of succession in order to legitimize his authority, which he has none. The whole church is a fraud, and Mormons are living in a little bubble world, or in denialism land, to defend the church at all costs for faith promotion. And shame on all of you critics who refuse to acknowledge this. You should at least be able to acknowledge that Brigham Young had no authority. That's all you gotta do. But instead, you are fooled into thinking you're going to destroy this church by convincing Mormons that Joseph is the whatever. It's the wrong argument. And yet, it's because they came from Brigham Young's church and left it. And so they were told the lies, and they still believe the lies, even though they're now doubt promoters. And so no, Joseph Smith did not practice polygamy. The Joseph Smith papers that Paul helped me with, time and time again, Joseph Smith is promoting monogamy, excommunicating those who are caught in polygamy. John C. Bennett, for example. And critics know of this, and yet they will not put the pieces of the puzzle together. And it's sad that both sides are fighting a useless argument against each other, never being able to convince the other of the falsehood of the other. And so no, it was Brigham Young and his Danites. They were secretly telling Mormon women, married Mormon women, that Joseph Smith approves of all this. He himself has a number of wives, and so he sent me for you to have sex with me, and we're going to be spiritual wives despite your husband, despite your little kids. You know, we'll just go into the bedroom and, we'll consummate our sealing. And then in 1843, Heber C. Kimball was sealed to a third woman. Yeah, third. Heber C. Kimball knocked up a woman and had a child with her in 1829 before joining the church. It's Heber C. Kimball, who joined the church to be a part of the leadership of the secret combination to have a lot of sex. Brigham Young, likewise, had a lot of sex. He wasn't really into marrying other women. His wife died shortly after he joined the church without her. But he then married another woman who specifically was to take care of the kids, and then he had more kids with her. But the women that Brigham Young was sealed to, I noticed, were all in their 40s when he married them. And so he really wasn't into the child bride marriages like Willard Richards was. Yeah. 2 sisters. Critics think that was in 1843 that Joseph Smith sealed them to Willard Richards. Willard Richards kept the actual documents from January 1846. And so who is accusing Joseph? Yeah, these Danites are accusing Joseph. And so all these women who willingly participated in this orgy fest, or got fooled into this orgy fest, were a part of a secret combination that you had to kill yourself if you were to reveal their secrets. And so they had no choice but to write in their journals, once they got to the valley here, once Brigham Young started enforcing the death penalty, to blame Joseph. Now, there was some blaming back when Joseph was alive, because in 1843, the Danites were making their accusations to set up Joseph to be assassinated. And as both Paul and I have realized, is that Brigham Young, even in that final year, was complaining all the time about Joseph, telling Joseph that you need to do this, Joseph. This needs to be done, Joseph. Come on, Joseph. You need to do this. Brigham Young was even involved in setting and paving the way for the assassination of Joseph Smith. So I see exactly what MAGA is doing right now to President Biden. They are paving the way for an assassination of our president. This is a Danite tactic. Both MAGA and the Danites came from the same source origin. And so, the Russians likewise. There's a reason why it's the double eagle on their seal. Everybody has been infiltrated by this organization now. That's why everything is escalating to destruction. The Book of Mormon warned everybody. And nobody wants to care because everybody's a conspirator in this. So, everybody purposely, and I saw another person make that comment too, that if you can convince people that something is false, they then go to the fallacious argument that therefore everything is false. That was the one particular comment that I gave. But that's exactly what Trump is doing, and getting MAGA to do it. If you can, Trump is on trial for crimes. So what does he do? They get MAGA to go after the Bidens and Hunter Biden, searching for anything, and anything that sticks, they exaggerate it to the extreme. And just like with Hillary and her emails back in 2016, they blow it up, make it this big criminal conspiracy for the sole purpose of saying, hey, if you're going to go after Trump, you got to go after everybody else. Everybody's doing it. And anybody who's read their Book of Mormon sees what's being done here. This is what Korihor was talking about. Anything a person does is not a crime. This is that doctrinal principle being played out on the national stage to destroy our Constitution, to destroy for good the already corrupted justice system, so that it becomes a survival of the fittest. That natural selection then steps in. And anything anybody does, as long as you're the fittest. And so thus why MAGA goes after the weak, women, those crossing the border, and turns their lives into criminal activity, so that they can do it after destroying our government. We've already been threatened that America will fall, if not earlier, by this election. MAGA will not allow Biden to win. If he wins, they will not accept the results. The states have already determined that their candidate will be Trump regardless. And now the Supreme Court. Yeah, they owed Trump a favor, though. And here it is. America is about to be destroyed. And apparently I'm the only voice on this, because I'm getting it straight from the Book of Mormon. Because the prophets are not prophets. They are not seers. They do not have dreams and visions. They are not prophets to predict the future. They are not revelators to give you the star dates of when these events are to take place. And they definitely don't even care about translation. It's all right there for all of you to see. All you have to do is read and comprehend what you read. So, Raw Garlic says, nice ring, Star of David. Nope, Shield of David. Include the circle around it. There is a difference. The Star of David is for King David, who is the first king of whom the Messiah of the Jews is to come from. The Shield of David is for that very Emmanuel. The circle is the sun symbol in Paleo-Hebrew. So, yeah, it's not a strange dream, right? It's very simple.